Well, welcome. You're now a friend of the show.
Very good.
That was a title. I'd been kicking around an idea for a show title for a while. And of course, we listened to all these podcasts where that term is used. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to steal it. I'm going to straight up steal that. And anyone who comes on is a friend of the show.
That's what we do too for our podcast, and it's kind of become podcast vernacular. So yeah, but I've not heard any shows actually by that name. So there you go.
Yeah, I think we're the first. I was actually just listening to you and Jason on Primary Technology, catching up on the latest episode. I All right. So, have you heard of Dragonsteel Nexus, Brandon Sanderson's conference for fantasy authors?
I'm familiar with Brand Sanderson, not familiar with the conference though.
It's his yearly conference he puts on, and a bunch of authors. Well, my family and I went there last week, and writers and readers are the nicest people. We're around thousands of people who just read for fun all the time. And I liken that a little bit to the few podcasters that I've met. They're just pretty chill people. So, welcome. It's nice to meet you. So I want to. There's this thing I've been thinking about, and it's actually kind of thanks to my brother Jonathan, kicked off this idea I had essentially for a podcast. And at least the first few episodes will get your take on your career path with what you've done so far in life. I don't know your age, but I'm guessing you're somewhere in your 30s like myself. How much do you attribute your career success up to this point to skill versus luck? So I'm just going to start with that question. Then I have a bunch of follow up thoughts. And the reason I'm coming with this question is I listen to a lot of other podcasters, a lot of other folks, and I've listened to you for a while now, and I want to have you on the show to see what my view of you is, that from this parasocial relationship perspective, which we're familiar with that with podcasting, where I know a lot more about you than you know about me because I've listened to you for hours. My perception of you is that you have had success in your career, and I want to first hear what you think about whether you feel you've had success and then how you think that's been attributed. So I'll pause. I'd love your open-ended thoughts on that question.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate where, I mean, just most recently, I've went completely independent, meaning I do YouTube, podcasting, and I don't work for anybody else. And that's the first time in a while. You were right. I'm almost out of my 30s. I'm 39. I turned 40 in March. And, I've worked full-time jobs my entire life. I have a family with 3 kids. And so I never even thought it would be an option to be totally independent, just work on my own. But I think I have seen some success, especially in the last 3 years, understanding YouTube and how to be a creator in this space and actually make money doing it. So I've been very fortunate for that. When it comes to luck versus skill, I do think success finds diligence. And whether you have the natural ability or skills in any given area, I think people can develop skills. And I have developed skills because I have a music degree, I have a trumpet performance degree. And so none of the skills that I use in my work today did I gain from college or even earlier. I largely taught myself, and taught myself meaning I watched lots of videos on it, whether it was tutorial videos or YouTube. And so I do think if you really want to learn a new skill, you can do it. There's so many resources out there now. If you are diligent and then practicing that skill, doing it over and over, trying to experiment and find a niche that works, then I think you can find success. Luck, I don't know. I don't like to say I'm lucky or don't think that other people can get lucky, but there are moments when there is serendipitous advancement or acknowledgement to your work that can push you along and accelerate your growth or your success. And so, I have a video on my YouTube channel where I talk about hitting 100,000 subscribers. And I talk about the moment when, like, the Mac Stories website, I believe it was John
Hmm.
Voorhees, embedded my review of the HomePod 2 in their article. Now, I didn't gain thousands of subscribers from that. I didn't make a ton of money from that, like none of that, but it legitimized my work, and more so legitimized in my own mind that this is viable and that other people will notice my work if I do good work and do it consistently and do it a lot. And so, was that lucky that they chose to embed my video in the article? I don't think so, but I do think you have to do something long enough and put your effort in there for consistent enough time for people to take notice, and then have the opportunity for those serendipitous moments to actually arrive.
I was listening to the recent episode of, I think, Sharp Tech with Ben Thompson, and he was describing that he's had success with Stratechery, and he's kind of got this general tech knowledge. And if a podcast wants to compete with him, good luck. But if someone wants to go deep on a specific topic within technology, he's going to happily link to it because he's always looking for ideas that are deeper than him to riff off of. And so I think of that Mac Stories example. You spent time, I'm supposed, and I haven't seen that specific video, but on a specific topic that John Voorhees was excited to link to because it had a depth of knowledge, I'm guessing, deeper than he was able to go at that moment because he does. I've listened to a ton of podcasts with him. He obviously knows a lot, but he saw someone who'd put in the work to give a specific helpful thing that was deeper than he had a knowledge of, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and putting in the work, you'll be rewarded if you put in the work. You know what I mean? And sometimes that is putting in the work over years. Sometimes it's in a single video. And another example I thought of, I review leather cases for iPhone every year because Apple stopped making leather cases. And that was the case that I preferred. And so I thought, well, if this is something that I'm interested in and want to know what's the best leather case, other people probably want to know that too. And those videos performed well for like several years. But then also someone like John Gruber, that was one of the first times he linked to one of my videos directly. And I think the ATP podcast talked about it in their show. So having passion for something, wanting to investigate it, find the best of the thing, try the things, compare the things, whatever it is, if you put in the effort, people will acknowledge that work. If it's not that huge publication that links to you, it still might just be the views or the attention you get from that piece of content because just the average viewer on YouTube or the reader or the podcast listener is understanding enough to say, oh, this person did the research, this person did the work, and that's going to give them a reason to follow you and your work going forward. And I think that happens in all of my shortcuts videos too. I think people realize I might talk about a shortcut for 10 seconds in a video, but as soon as they download it and try it themselves, they realize, oh, he put work into this and it was worthwhile for me to maybe see what he comes up with in the future. And so I think all of that just kind of compounds over time. Is that luck? I don't think so. I think it's diligence and it's work.
So I had a topic recently for my newsletter that I was talking to a colleague about reading and the benefits of books. And I get this often from other folks that they don't like reading books. And my retort is probably because you were forced to read bad books in college or high school. And
Mm-hmm.
at some point, you just decided that wasn't for you. And so I made a plea. I've written multiple articles about it's books on any topic you can imagine and why I think they'd be cool. And I've shared those often. So I went that night and I actually wrote an article for this colleague and I sent it to them the next morning. And I said, hey, will you please take a look at this? And she subscribed to my newsletter and another guy subscribed to the newsletter because just as you described, actually for one person, I wrote an article on a topic that comes up often. And as someone who loves to read, this is an important one for me, right? I've spent years thinking about this. And so I love what you just said because that was a practical use case of that was probably one of the easier articles I've written in the last month because I was writing it to her to try and see if I could help and benefit her. And I think it did. She's probably going to pick up a book or two and probably disagree with me and say that was a stupid book, but like take maybe some action for her own benefit. I guess I wonder if I were to like have you pick a spectrum, you'd say, hey, it's mostly skill and then serendipity occurs at some point. What would you say to people who feel that this is a self-therapist podcast somewhat, if you can't tell. What would you say to people who feel they've been toiling away for years on some things they feel they love and not seeing that recognition? Like why do some things seem to get picked up and paid attention to, but other things don't? What's your perspective on that?
You know, there might be a hard truth that if you've been doing a podcast or a YouTube channel for 10 plus years and it has not
Mm,
caught on, you might have to ask yourself, like, is this a medium that I excel at? Is
hmm
this something that I, am actually providing value for the people on the other end of the camera or the headphone? And so actually asking for honest feedback from maybe people close to you or those who have followed you for years to say, like, what do you think I could do better? And so I think there's a place for seeking honest feedback. So that could be number one. Number two, it might be a slight shift in what you cover or how you cover it.
hmm
If you started a podcast today about sports, you could probably do that for 10 years and never get anywhere because that is a saturated topic and there's a lot of podcasts already doing it. And so if you started something 10 years ago, but it was a very saturated niche, then you might not gain the kind of traction and growth that you had hoped. And so you might have to reevaluate, do I need to change my angle or my approach of how I'm doing this? There were a lot of tech YouTubers that had many years ahead of me when I started, and I really put a concerted effort about 3 years ago, which is very late. there's lots of YouTubers who've been doing it for over a decade or
Yeah,
more.
incredibly late, 2022. You would have thought it's all done. You can't break in
It's
at
all
that point.
done. And so if I had just done the same kinds of topics and focused on the same kinds of things that others did, I might not have been successful. And so maybe the third thing is
Mm,
you have to experiment. You have to try something vastly different and try it several times to see maybe will resonate more. And I use the example of when the iPhone 15 came out. I didn't have review units. I didn't have early access to anything. I got the iPhone 15 the same day everybody else did. But no one, I looked on YouTube and searched, and I didn't see anybody making a video about plugging all the USB-C devices they could possibly think of into this phone. And so that's what I made a video about. I plugged a printer, I plugged a game controller, I plugged a monitor just to see what would work because I thought that was interesting. And, it was a risk. All the videos that were out on YouTube were iPhone 15. Here's my, all of that because people actually had the phone already, like MKBHD and all the YouTube channels have been doing it. But that experiment really paid off. That video blew up. I made a video immediately after it about the same topic. I plugged even more stuff into the USB-C port, and I gained like 10,000 subscribers in that single month. That was the most growth I've ever had in a single month, I think, on YouTube. But it only happened because I experimented. I tried something different. I tried to be a little unique. And so if you've been doing something for 10 plus years, then think about what other podcasts, YouTube channels, writers in my space are doing similar things. And can I differentiate even more? Can I offer something that these others are not that's unique to my experience or my expertise or whatever that may be? And then try to double down on that and see if you can get somewhere. And also, I've always wanted to write. I've wanted to have articles on my website and maybe have a blog. And I've done that for a very long time, longer than I made podcasts and YouTube videos, but those never gained traction. I never did it super consistently. So you do have to be honest yourself with that. But I also realized that's not a medium that I excel at. I'm actually better at and faster at, ironically, making a video. I can make a 10-minute video faster than I can write an article, even after doing both for many years. And so the medium that you started 10 years ago actually may not be the best medium, even though you want to do it and love it.
yes.
Maybe you would excel at a video rather than a podcast or vice versa.
That actually led into the next topic that I've been thinking about because I agree that there's the one element of maybe the content is not right for the market, right? The other is maybe the medium that I enjoy is not the medium people are willing to accept. For instance, I enjoy reading. I have an RSS reader with 300 plus people that I read every day because I don't want to use Twitter. I want to make my own algorithm. I don't want to have it fed to me. So that's like this very manual process that almost nobody else will do, right? And so I'm trying to write for that audience, which is incredibly small. How many people do what I do to try and read the way I read? Versus, if we're being honest, pretty much everyone we know is in the evenings on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, like scrolling through short form videos. And I don't do that myself, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't be creating for that necessarily. So this is what I've been struggling with because I I love to speak, so I love podcasting, and I love to write. I do not like video, but maybe that's something I should just get over. And so that kind of leads into this question that I have with you about video. On the talk show recently, you were kind of describing your process for making videos. You mentioned you can do a 10-minute video really quickly. Can you, maybe that USB-C example, can you give me an example of a video you made recently where you said, I have this idea. The moment you have that idea, what's the process look like to pressing publish?
It's different for every kind of video. I have a reminders Kanban board with a bunch of ideas, and I have some separated in the one column. It says up next. So these are videos that are kind of imminent that I really want to make, or maybe there's a sponsor that I need to make. And so those are up next. And then I have a list of kind of brainstorming and coming soon videos that I might plan for a while and do in the future, and then kind of in between. So videos like my shortcuts videos, those are really put together over the course of a week or two where I get shortcuts requests from my community or on social media. I'll build those shortcuts. And once I have about 15 or 20 that I really enjoy, I'll make a video about it. And then making the video is literally just sitting down, recording myself talking about these 15 shortcuts and then posting that. And so the planning might be a few minutes every day for a week, and then, an hour of filming it, and then an hour of editing it, and then it's done. Some videos, like literally just before I came on to record with you, I wanted to have a video of iOS 26.2. It's probably coming out today. And so I like to have a video come out when that drops of the biggest new features. And so last night, I wrote down a 10 bullet point list of the features I wanted to put in the video. I kind of already knew what those were from I just read the stuff and absorb it all day, every day. So that took about 5 minutes. And then this morning, I recorded for maybe 40 minutes and then edited that for maybe 30 minutes. And that video is ready to publish. So as soon as iOS 26.2 releases, I'm about to publish that. So that was probably less than 2 hour process. Those kind of feature videos that are very self explanatory, shortcuts videos, it's a different kind of process. And then others, like I want to do a video, I hope to release it soon, called Is Apple Cooked? And I want to talk about all the executives that have been leaving and what that means and who's replaced them. And so that one, it's not a typical video for me. So it's actually a little bit
Mhm.
of an experiment to say, is this going to be received well? Do people want to see this kind? And I literally ask at the end of the video, if you enjoy this kind of video and want me to do more of it, let me know in the comments. But that one, I spent probably about an hour, 2 hours researching yesterday, writing some notes. I maybe spent an hour, another two, writing. And then I filmed it this morning with my notes. I'm going to edit it. It's going to take a little more editing time because I want to pull clips from different keynotes. I want to find screen grabs of articles. So that might be a 6 hour process. But I don't make videos that take me days or weeks to make.
Hmm.
One thing too is my motivation. As soon as a video, like when I get a video idea that I know I can make quickly and I want to make it, I want to publish that video like immediately. And as soon as I run into, well, I have to film today, but I have to wait or I have to edit it another day, and then that video will probably not happen just because my way of doing it, like I just want to do it. I just want to put it
Hmm.
out there. So I kind of try to formulate my content around stuff that I can make quickly. And even like my podcast, we record 8:30 in the morning on Thursday, and the full episode is published by noon. And that's with recording time. So we'll record for almost 2 hours. That's 8:30 to 10:30.
Yeah.
I'll spend 10:30 to noon really focused in and edit that whole show, video and audio with chapters, show notes, and publish it by like noon or 1 o'clock. Because if I have to edit that the next day, I just start losing motivation. So I like that quick turnaround personally.
That's actually really inspiring for me because my writing process is similar, where I have probably 1,500 writing ideas on various notes and lists and such. But on a given day, I pretty much ignore all of those, and because I have an idea that's been turning in my head for the last 24 hours or the last 2 minutes. But if I don't have one, I'll go to my list of 1,500 and I'll pull one if it's interesting. And what I've noticed is, and this sounds similar to you, the big ideas that I really want to write, like those magnum opus pieces, they're never going to happen. It's more the piece that's just bugging and irritating me today. I'll sit down, put out 1,000 words, and then I'm done and I move on. And of course, if people have feedback or there's errors, I come back. But otherwise, I'm on to the next one. And what you just described actually feels a little bit inspiring for me if I were to try this video creation process, because I'm not interested either in multiple weeks on a single piece, right? For a single article, I might spend an hour because writing's different, right? You spend maybe a half hour writing, half hour editing, you publish, that's it. And you just got me thinking, that's kind of interesting. I guess a follow-up question with this is how much, there's a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. He wrote Deep Work, incredibly inspiring books I've read over the years. And he has this thing he describes in there where he says, don't follow your passion. Instead, become a craftsman, get good at something, and then often joy and delight and marketplace acceptance will follow, and you create a feedback loop where you continue enjoying it and you love it. How much of what you're now doing, since you've gone full time, do you feel passionate and love for versus you're good at it, you're getting acceptance, and it's creating a loop to continue? Like, where do you fall on that?
Thankfully, I mean, going independent, I get to choose everything that I do. And I'm lucky enough, and I say lucky, but I'm fortunate enough where now what I do is what I'm passionate about. I love tech. I'm a nerd. I love automation and shortcuts. I love smart home. I love podcasts. And so I get to do all of that in the content that I make. Now, for many years in my full time jobs, I used similar skills, but I made things I wasn't as passionate about. I worked 5 years at a travel agency making video content. So I would make videos of tours and cruises. And I was gaining skills during that time of video editing, of filming. I actually went on trips and captured B-roll and filmed, people talking about the trips on location. And so I was gaining skills that would play into even what I do today, but it wasn't about the topic that I'm most passionate about. And for a lot of people, that's probably the case. Like you're going to probably have to work jobs for a number of years that you might not be super passionate about what the job is or what the job does, but don't dismiss the job entirely at that it will never have any use. You might be developing skills that are helpful. Like graphic design is probably my weakest point.
Mm.
Like I'm not good at graphic design. I do what I can with the thumbnails, but I know they probably could be better. But I spent a number of years actually leading a creative team who was made up of video editors and graphic designers and marketing people and social media. And I learned from them, and working
Mm.
with them and leading them. It was a great collaborative effort. I worked with some couple guys who are incredible filmmakers who actually knew about lighting and frame rates, and I would learn from them even while I was leading the overall projects. And so whatever jobs you work, you might be developing skills to play into whatever you get to do later. And now I get to use the skills I developed and what I enjoy doing. I like making videos, I like making podcasts in the topic that I'm most passionate about as well. And that might also be something if you can't sustain if you're not passionate about it.
Mm.
When it comes to content, whether it's writing, video, podcasts, if you are not passionate about the topic you're talking about, you will not have longevity. It's just a fact. And even I have tried to make videos or talk about things that are off topic or slightly different than tech and the stuff I talk about, and it just doesn't work. I'm not as motivated. And again, if you're not motivated, again, I wouldn't try to formulate a content career or even invest a ton of time if you're not truly topic. And that's when people say they're going to start a podcast. I tell people, don't do a topic that you think is popular but that you don't care
Mhm.
about. Like true crime is a very popular podcast genre, and some of the biggest podcasts fall into that genre. So you could try to do a true crime podcast and you could do, narrative stories and add background music and sound effects and find compelling stories to tell. But if you don't really care about true crime and you're not passionate about it, you will not do that show for 10 years. It's just impossible to have the motivation to do it. So I think if you're aiming to create content in any way, make it something you're passionate about.
You know, you got me thinking. One of the topics I've been writing about for several years now is Freeform, the Mac app. And I have not yet found a tech Apple enthusiast who covers the app. And
I
I
have not
keep
either.
looking. But so in my career, I'm a UX designer. I make apps for a living. That's my day job. And so I spend every day in that app. And I've also used every alternative. I've written about every alternative. I've looked for every alternative. This is a topic I am very passionate about because several hours of every workday are in an app of this nature. And I'll hear John Gruber or Ben Thompson reference it, and it's just a passing reference because it's not their passion, right? Versus if Arial, the font, was somewhere in an app, John's going to talk about it, right? He's going to get so irate. For me, that app drives me up the wall. I have literally emailed Apple through a private contact to try to get a single feature fixed because there's little
Mm,
bugs. But this isn't exactly what you're describing, but you can probably tell I'm passionate about this because I complain about the app and I write about my complaints because it is so good. And this is the thing I haven't found other tech enthusiasts describing, so I write about it, that it solves a unique problem better than anything else in the marketplace, which is a massive whiteboard to sketch out the flow of the architecture of an app. It is bar none the best at it. And I've even thought, like, all right, is there some way that I could monetize this, write field guides, something about this? Because I don't think people realize, even in the age of AI and all this vibe coding, which I do, one of the best ways to create an app is still to hand draw it out.
mm.
And I have all kinds of notepads around me right now. It's much easier on Freeform. Copy, paste. And like, you can't do that on paper. So all that's to say, I have zero interest. And I love that you described that in making a true crime podcast. But there are little topics that so many people listening probably have incredibly strong opinions on and have thought about for years, that the world wants to hear, that would benefit from it. Obviously, like your shortcuts YouTube video that you made, that resonated. Your USB-C one, that resonated. Things like that resonate. And I just think that's kind of inspiring because I saw this Reddit post a while back. If you had to give a 20-minute topic with 2 minutes notice, what would it be on? We all have that, right? For me, it'd either be on bags, books, or freeform.
Well, yeah, and I would just say one of the ways to think about how can I be successful as a creator of any kind is what would other people call you? And so people do on social media now call me the shortcuts guy. Sometimes, with great humility, they say the shortcuts king, which I reject personally because I think of Matthew Casanelli and Federico Viticci as the shortcuts
Hmm.
kings. But that is how people will think of me. And that means I've been something sticky in their mind. Like I've created a
Mm.
niche. And so conceptualize how might other people talk about your content in that, like you said, an elevator pitch style word. And honestly, freeform I've wondered a lot about that app. I don't see content about it. You could very probably easily become the freeform guy because no one else is talking about it. And just in the few seconds you did talk about it, I could feel your passion on the other side. And that's what people respond to in video, in audio, but in writing, but in video and audio, it comes forth really clearly is when someone's enthusiastic about a topic, people are drawn to that enthusiasm because they want to feel that. They want to experience that. I think that's why people resonate with my shortcuts videos because I'm passionate and excited about it. They want to be excited about it too, and they get to kind of feed off of that. And so you saying freeform is the best at this, like that's news to me. And if you had a video about that, it probably would blow up. Now, how do you do that long term? Do you just make freeform videos? Do you just, can you branch that out into other things, or how many things can you use freeform for? That's how you have to, then you have to think about planning your content. How is this sustainable? But 100%, I mean, doing a few videos on freeform, how it work on the different platforms, freeform on iPad, freeform on Mac, a lot of ways you could go with that. See, I don't know, seems pretty clear. Like you could do that. And even if it's TikTok or Instagram, again, even if you're not comfortable with video, it's a good place to kind of test an idea. I will often put a reel now. I'm trying to do a reel a day on Instagram and TikTok. And so a lot of them are shortcuts or iPhone tips. And I don't really, it's very a low risk. Like if something like doesn't do well on those platforms, it clearly doesn't affect my next videos, and I don't really care. As opposed to on YouTube, if a video doesn't do well, I get a little more concerned about like what is the algorithm going to think if my subscribers don't watch it, watch time, and all that kind of stuff. So Instagram and TikTok is a great place to just like try stuff. So I'll put a shortcut on Reels and TikTok and see how it performs. And if it performs super well, I might put that short on YouTube, or I might make a long video about it. So for yourself, who you might not be super comfortable with video and you're just experimenting,
Mhm.
make a reel, make a TikTok, make just 60 seconds or less about what you do with freeform, how it's useful, and see how that resonates with people. And then that could immediately be a proof of concept of, okay, this got tens of thousands of views. There's something here. Maybe I should make a YouTube video about it. Maybe I should whatever. And then you could try more.
And if it gets 0 resonance, all right, maybe I'm, one of the few people who cares about this, right? That would be a quick way to test.
But I wouldn't also judge it on one. One video might fail. And I had a lot of shortcut videos that on Reels and TikToks that did not do well. And then eventually I shared one that blew up. And so I would say, even with Reels and TikToks, do like 10 and then see. Do 10 reels about freeform, slightly different things, different features, your use cases, and then see how it goes. And so never judge one failure as this will never work, and also never judge one success as like, this is now my brand. Do multiple and wait till you get multiple of either fails or successes.
So you were recently on the talk show with Gruber, and was it on the talk show or Primary
Yeah,
Technology App where you talked about Flighty and Widgetsmith? And
that was the primary
it's
technology because Jason
thank
interviewed
you.
the Flighty creator. Yeah,
It all blends together. So
it's all right.
there was something that really stood out to me. These are both apps that I use, and I've followed the creators of these apps, especially with Widgetsmith. I've followed that whole journey for quite a while with the Under the Radar podcast, fantastic podcast that just ended. And one thing that stuck out to me is realizing that Widgetsmith was, what's his name?
Underscore
James
David Smith.
David Smith. I get James Smith. Yes, David Smith. I think it was his first app that he made or something like
Yes,
that.
yes.
And that just kind of blew me away, right? It was not his second one. It was not his third one. It was not his fourth one. It was his 50 something app that he saw an idea. He jumped on it. He was the first one to really take advantage of widgets at the time that were being released from Apple on day one. And it blew up. He's had 100 million downloads now. And that's not why he does it, right? That's not why he makes apps for that reason. He was making apps. He had to have been making apps purely because he loved it for years to get to the point where one of them finally turned into a success. And so I appreciate that you describing that with the reels, because I have written on freeform for years now. I've described it. I've waxed as eloquently as I could on my little newsletter, and it is the top trending item that people come to my blog for, is what I write about on freeform. But there, shoot, I might have to put it back on the show later, but there's a podcast about economics, economy, whatever, where everything has become television. Gruber recently related to this. Every form of media is turning into television. Meta's trying to do it. YouTube obviously is doing it. All the players, Netflix doing it, where television just watching in the background is where things are headed. I'm kind of trying to push against that by writing, but it might be a futile effort where maybe I just need to embrace to some level putting out some television because that's where people are. Even if I writing is my true passion, yeah, I can talk about a topic for a while and see if that would pull someone in back in. So that's kind of interesting. I'm curious, kind of as a follow up to this. Do you have videos that completely fall on their face and you're still surprised?
Well, yeah, all the time. I mean, recently, one of my best performing videos was about Comet, the AI browser. And when that came out on Mac, I blew my mind. I was like, this could do all this stuff. I made a video, and the video blew up. It was picked up by large publications, embedded in things like Financial Times or whatever. And so I was like, okay, well, this thing got 400,000 views. It seems like AI browsers and my audience, like, this is going to work. So then Comet came out on Android. And so it's the first AI browser you could get on a mobile device. And I was like, this should be even bigger. This is on a mobile device, more user base. So I posted a video on Comet on Android. That video flopped. It did not do well. It had a couple thousand views compared to my average that's very low. And that was surprising to me. And I was like, well, maybe it's because, in my other Comet video, I said it changed how I use my Mac. And I didn't phrase anything about how it, whatever. But I did test titles that I was like, I want this on iPhone or whatever. But obviously it didn't resonate with people. And maybe it's because AI browsers, people kind of, it's been out there now. People know what they do. And so, who knows? I don't exactly know why that video didn't perform as well. But that doesn't tell me, and I don't take that information as we'll never make an AI browser video again, nor does it mean, well, the next one will definitely blow up. Like, it doesn't mean, I don't know what it means. I need more data. And so next time a video comes along that I want to make about an AI browser on mobile or desktop, I'll see what happens and experiment again. And that's kind of the nice thing about content, even on YouTube. You make a large volume of it, one video doesn't matter. It just doesn't. And so I had videos after that that did really well. I've had my very last video, which was about my screen time recap shortcut. I thought that was going to do really well on YouTube, and it didn't do well either. Oh well, it's fine. It's actually blowing up on Instagram and TikTok, so I know that like people are interested in this, and so it's all just information. It helps guide what do I do in my next video, how do I package it differently, do I repeat the same kind of video in the future? Who knows? But that's part of the experimentation, trying different things, trying different topics, and seeing what works.
Thank you. It's really cool. But it's been great having you on, and this has kind of turned into a hey, where am I going to go next with what stuff I'm trying to create? So I appreciate you indulging all of my questions on this topic. What is the best way that people can find you?
Well, you can go to beard.fm. That's my website, and I have links to everything there. My podcast, Primary Technology, my Shortcuts community, which has really grown and is just vibrant place of people who love shortcuts, requesting shortcuts, and I do live streams there every week. So just go to beard.fm. You'll find links to all that and my YouTube channel as well.
Thank you so much.
No, that's awesome. I mean, honestly, the freeform stuff, I'd be very interested to see how you use freeform and why you think it's valuable, because I know it's probably a powerful app. I just have never found a use case. And that's one of the things, like in my shortcuts videos, a lot of people watch them for inspiration of how shortcuts can apply to them, even if the shortcut I'm showing doesn't directly work for them. And so you making freeform videos or content, you might not be doing the thing that I'm going to do. Like, I'm not going to wireframe an app with freeform, but seeing you use it and do it can open my eyes and to the possibilities of what can be done with this app, with this service, shortcuts, whatever. And so that's a huge benefit to the people, to your audience. And people will come for that, just to be inspired about how this can work for them, even if it's not a one-to-one correlation.
Yeah, because you may not want to sketch out an entire app, but there's ways you want to think, right? As a human, there's ways you want to think, and you're like, okay, let me see how Joshua does this to see if I can pull it into my own life. Because you run project management for yourself, right? And maybe this would fit into your life in some way like that.